Nathan, I guess the story of the week really is Iowa's loss, and I was pretty much adamant last week during our podcast saying that they were not going to lose to Purdue. I didn't even give it much of a thought that it could happen, but they were pretty much throttled by Purdue, 24-7.
I agree. I think I said the same thing. I definitely know I felt the same way that Iowa wasn't going to lose another game. Well, I don't know if another game, but they weren't going to lose.
We didn't think they were going to lose.
I didn't think
game.
so. Yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, so I was very surprised that they lost to Purdue. But I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Really, just I think we all. I don't know if we discussed this, but I think we all felt that if they made it to the playoffs, they weren't going to be a team that was really going to be able to make any noise.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
But I thought they'd make the playoff though, so that was strange. Now they definitely won't. Obviously,
no, they won't. They won't.
But did you see any of the game? Did you?
I did. I watched.
What were your impressions of it?
My impressions of it was that they just. I mean, their offense, they couldn't do anything. I mean, the 24-7 is quite a beatdown when you're playing at home against an unranked Purdue team. Notre Dame beat Purdue. Really didn't struggle that much with Purdue. I mean, they struggled a little bit, but the game was never in doubt. Purdue does have a good offense. They have a good quarterback and some good receivers, but Iowa's defense was not able to contain them, and Purdue never gave them. It's almost like Purdue put their foot on their neck and never really let up to give them any air because Iowa could never really mount any kind of comeback. And the thing is, they're probably kicking themselves because really, I mean, after that, like we talked about last week, they're at Wisconsin this coming week. Or I take that back. They're off this week. Then they're at Wisconsin. So had they beaten Purdue, they'd have a week off to kind of get healthy and regroup. And then at Wisconsin, at Northwestern, two very winnable games. Wisconsin's offense is very poor. And then home against Minnesota and home against Illinois and then at Nebraska. So
we thought they were going to go undefeated.
We thought they were going to go undefeated, yeah.
And, I mean, assuming this loss doesn't dampen their spirits or they feel like they have nothing to play for, I think they still will win out.
I think they will too, yeah.
And then, like we talked about this some last week too, which if you want to play the whole game of, well, this team A beat Team B, and Team C beat Team A, so Team C is better than Team B, that type of thing.
Right.
If you want to play that whole game of strength of schedule stuff, this makes Notre Dame look a lot better.
It does.
But I know you talked about you don't necessarily buy that whole strength of schedule. You say each game is its own entity, right? You can't really look at, well, this team beat another higher ranked team 3 weeks ago. It's just, each game is its own little ecosystem or its own little, what do you call it?
Its own little entity, if you will. Yeah.
So you don't really buy this. This does make Notre Dame look better, I think, to the voters or whatever. But you don't really buy it in your mind that it makes Notre Dame that much.
I don't. No, I think it will. It has an effect to the committee that will vote on the college football rankings. But I don't think it makes much difference.
You don't feel any better about Notre Dame now after last week than you did before. Okay?
No, because trying to tell me that, like you said, if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. But Notre Dame played Purdue, almost 4 weeks ago. Okay, so you can't tell me that's the same Purdue team that played against Iowa for two reasons. One, Purdue had to go into Notre Dame Stadium, and they did play pretty well. Yeah. But this was a conference game, all right, and it was on the road. Okay. So, but still, you can't tell me that you can make that adjustment. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think I've probably always been one to think that way. Think, oh well, this would Notre Dame maybe is better than I ever thought because Purdue beat a high ranked team. Notre Dame beat Purdue, but after you made your case about it, I agree with you. I think I never totally bought into that, but I guess I thought there was some. I don't know. I didn't totally buy into that theory, but I'm more and more I think about it after this last week. I agree that. You can't play that type of you can't play that type of game because, like you said, each game's its own thing, and who knows what external factors went into something, or what, like you said, home versus away or conference game, or you never know what went into stuff. So
Well, another thing you can't factor in is that there's too many external factors. Okay,
Yeah.
In other words, let's take Notre Dame for example. Okay, we talked last week about the fact that if Notre Dame wins out and goes 11-1, and Cincinnati's 12-0. That makes Cincinnati's win over Notre Dame look a lot better, right? Okay, that's true, but you got to factor the fact in that Notre Dame has a new defensive coordinator. They had lots of injuries on their offensive line. Their offensive line from week 1 to week 11 could get a whole lot better. The defense could be more comfortable with the new coordinator system. So how Notre Dame is playing at the end of the season is not really a reflection of how they played at week number 4, right? And the same with Cincinnati. So there's too many factors that go on. Now with Alabama, it's not quite the same, right? Same coaching staff, great athlete. I mean, so maybe a little bit there, but still I don't buy into the fact that you can make that jump and say, hey, this is the case.
Which is why the whole strength of schedule thing is ridiculous. But that's the only way they can do it because they don't have a better
correct.
system.
Now, what Iowa has to hope for, Iowa now is tied for the lead in the Big Ten West with Purdue and Minnesota. So Iowa has to hope that Purdue loses again, because otherwise Purdue would win the West by virtue of their win over Iowa. But my point is, if Iowa wins the West, they would play the winner of the Big Ten East. Now, Michigan State's 4-0, Ohio State's 3-0, Michigan's 3-0. Ohio State has to play Michigan. Michigan State has to play Michigan. So there's going to be a winner there. So what I'm trying to say is, if Iowa can win out and can win the Big Ten championship, all right, then you go back and look at the top 25, okay? They've got to hope for some more chaos, right? They've got to hope. Michigan State may lose. Michigan may lose. Oklahoma State's got to play. So there's a possibility, slight as it may seem, that Iowa could jump back into the race. But what they have to hope is that there's enough one-loss teams outside of the top 2, all right? Because we don't think Georgia's going to lose. We don't think Cincinnati's going to lose. But Oklahoma could lose. Alabama, Ohio State have already lost. Michigan could lose. Iowa beat Penn State, so that negates Penn State. And Oklahoma State and Michigan could lose. So, they still have a chance, even though a slim chance.
That's a good point. I just looked at that and thought they don't have a chance, but you're right. They do. I mean, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State have to play each other.
Right.
And whoever wins that will be undefeated still,
right.
Probably, but they probably have to play a Big 12 championship game.
Right.
So they could knock them out. Like you said, Michigan State, Ohio State, they all are either going to play each other, have to play in a Big 10 championship. So, yeah.
Well, if you look at the teams that are ahead of Iowa, right? I mean, you've got...
But again, though, I mean, there are already some one-loss teams ahead of them, though, like Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama. So, like you said, there could be, and they're not going to jump. They're not going to jump Iowa over those teams. I don't think so. No,
unless Iowa. I mean, the best scenario for Iowa would be for Michigan to beat Michigan State. That knocks Michigan State out. For Ohio State to beat Michigan, that knocks them out, all right? And then for Iowa to beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, all right? Now you've got Iowa up there with all the other one-loss teams, and then it's a possibility.
Yeah, okay? Oklahoma State, one of those, both will not be undefeated.
Correct.
So then it's still, I think they have an outside chance.
An outside chance. Not as much of a lock as they had before, but an outside chance. I think we've already pretty much said that unless Cincinnati has a down week, or Stubbs, Cincinnati's going to go undefeated, okay? Georgia right now, I mean, their toughest game left is Florida, okay? And Florida does not look like a team. They lost to LSU, for goodness sake. They gave LSU 49 points, okay?
Who effectively fired their coach after that.
Right. So I just don't see Georgia losing unless they lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game, which is a possibility, okay? But still Georgia's going to be in. I mean, I still believe Georgia is in. They may not be number 1, but they may get in as the number 4 team.